How will the first encounter of a monkey and a piglet look? How can we attract attention of our pet? Will it recognize itself in a reflection? Are cats so fearless when it comes to snakes? Watch until the end and you'll learn everything. In this episode, you'll see the funniest and most unusual reactions of animals you'll be surprised at. Tell me, what would you think if you saw such a creature on the streets of your city? I think many of you wouldn't even recognize it's a dog, and that, frankly, is not surprising at all. After all, the dog looks as if it was never cut in its life. Unfortunately, in the realities of our world, it happens. It's not known for what reasons, but Ginta, this is the name of the dog, was thrown out on the street. Passers-by helped it with food, but unfortunately, no one could help it with care. As the years went by, the dog was becoming more and more overgrown with hair. It got to the point that under the giant layer of hair, it was no longer visible. The dog looked completely unattractive in this state, and many people even avoided it, fearing that it may be contagious or aggressive. However, one of the passers-by decided to call the nearest shelter and get help from specialists. Perhaps the man was worried for his life, or maybe he really just wanted to help the animal. No one knows for sure. But whatever the case, the action was very, very right. The veterinarians who arrived on the call at first didn't even realize that it was a dog. So much the animal was overgrown with hair. In addition, the entire body was covered with a thick crust of dirt, which made it look like the dog had a skin of stone. None of the animal advocates could even name the breed with certainty. Poor dog was taken in and cleaned up the same day. The dog's fur was literally soaked with dirt, tangled and dried up in long mats. Without special equipment, it would have been impossible to remove these hairy shackles from the dog. But luckily for the animal, the groomers still managed to accomplish this difficult task. Armed with electric shavers, people began to free the face from excess hair. The work was not easy. The dirt on the hair clogged the blades and they had to be constantly cleaned. However, as the hair was shaved off, the dog's muzzle began to show. As I think, the dog remembered this feeling for the rest of his life. Following the head, the dog's neck was also freed, and then the rest of the body. I'm afraid to guess how many pounds had gone off Ginta before it was born for the second time. Immediately after the haircut, it was bathed and thoroughly examined. To the vet's surprise, the dog was almost completely healthy. The only thing was that it was a little emaciated and slightly dehydrated. The dog was named Ginta because of its silver coloring, and I think it liked the name. The animal was happily jumping around the specialists and was clearly happy with what had been done to her. I hope that such a major haircut was not only the first in her life, but also the last at the same time. The cat that will be discussed now, similarly to Ginta, is overgrown. However, what surprised me more in this case was the beginning of the story. As the experts told the story, they found this cat right at the entrance to their shelter. The animal was lying quietly in a special portable cage. In the first seconds of acquaintance with the animal, people were very puzzled because the workers of the center could not see his face or paws. It looked like a son of Predator or Bob Marley. Only a thorough examination finally dismissed doubts and showed that it was a cat. According to the shelter staff, they'd never seen an animal in such a state of disrepair. This creature was literally held hostage by its own fur. This prevented it from moving around properly, breathing, or even resting. An immediate haircut was required. Bob Marley, as this four-legged creature was nicknamed, was immediately sent to the vets where it was sedated and trimmed. More than 4.5 pounds of hair had to be removed from the animal. As soon as this happened, the cat immediately became cheerful and active. He must have missed being able to run fast and jump. Divine. That's probably what the squirrel in the following video thought to itself as it tasted almonds for the first time in its life. As soon as the little one put the first nut in its mouth, it immediately froze, stared straight, and wondered why it had never tasted such a delicious fruit before. The squirrel stood in a dazed state for a few seconds and then began to fill her mouth with all the almonds the man had in his hand. Either it was planning to give them to its fellow creatures, or it was just worried that the magic hand with a gift from above might slam shut. In general, watching animals try or see something for the first time is very funny. Here, for example, a domestic cat that's been in contact only with adults all his conscious life. Therefore, when he saw a child for the first time, everything was mixed up in his head. He didn't know what he should do next. Out of interest, the four-legged creature began to touch the baby as gently as possible, as if it was not a stranger but his own baby. Leave a like if you find this video insanely touching. In fact, I'm increasingly catching myself thinking that people, and any other creatures, need very little to be happy. Dogs, for example, just need to be in the pouring rain for the first time. In these pictures, you can see a happy dog jumping in the rain. And not even just jumping, but rather dancing with joy. On top of that, it catches the raindrops with its mouth. But what you hardly want to check with your mouth is a snake. That's the character of our next story. The cat saw a crawler for the first time in its life and was completely at a loss. The Nova Scotia residents who filmed it were shocked by their pet's reaction. Raised on his hind legs, the animal stared at the snake with a very funny expression on its face, and according to the people behind the camera, stood in this position for several minutes. You know, this behavior of the cat when meeting with a snake may seem strange. Like, how can it be that a predator was surprised by a snake? In fact, everything in life is once in a while for the first time. Giraffes, for example, can be surprised by their own shadow that they've never paid attention to before. This funny video was filmed in an Australian park, and I think that after what happened, the young giraffe will definitely need a psychologist. After all, who, if not him, will explain that it's normal to have a shadow? Also, according to scientists, something not very good has been happening to the giraffe population in recent years. Yes, they're still far from the brink of extinction, but their numbers are gradually decreasing because of uncontrolled poaching. The total number of giraffes is estimated at 110,000 to 150,000. I mean, it's better not to scare them and let them breed in peace. The character of the following video that touched me to the core was this kitten. Judging by its reaction to the card trick, it had never met with such magic. The animal's not accustomed to deception, so it doesn't understand where the card goes. Kitty can't even think that its own master is playing a trick on him. This cute and faithful look in the direction of the flight of the card is something truly magical, something that elicits a smile on your face. Magic. Leave a like if you agree with me. What was far from a smile on my face was the face of this dog. The curious dog was waiting for its owner to give him a taste of pickle. The pet had seen the man eat it many times but never tasted it. When the moment of X came, the dog changed its mind, literally in a second, and immediately spit the nasty stuff away. I don't think I've ever seen such a quick transition from intrigue to disgust before. Stop following me. I'm sure that's exactly what was going through this fluffy creature's mind. It was standing in front of a mirror for the first time in its life and couldn't figure out how it was possible. Why was there something just like itself in front of it, but unattainable and repeating all the actions with filigree precision? Our handsome friend raises its paw, whereas its clone opposite does the same. Wherever the doggy turns its head, the sly fox repeats it. The clone even knows the backward movement and does it at the same time as the dog. How is that possible? The monkey Bibi in the following video met a pig for the first time. She'd never seen these creatures before. So the meeting turned out to be incredibly interesting and at the same time useful for her. During her time, Bibi was able to personally get acquainted with her new friend, touch, smell, and study it in every possible way. And you'll be surprised, Bibi even had a romantic dinner with the pig. She also rested on it and gave it a relaxing massage. Am I the only one who thinks these two were made for each other? When someone sees a pig for the first time in his life, another creature sees birds for the first time. This kitty, who's in front of you now, has never met birds before, as it spent all its time in a purely domestic environment. But then, unexpectedly for the four-legged cat, its hostess raised it in front of the window, and the cat saw birds on the street. Look with what awe and surprise it reacted to them. The cat began to move its paws quickly and looked in the owner's direction in surprise after each movement of a bird outside the window. If I were the owner, I would let it out for a walk in the yard to let it discover something new. Like learning about frogs. This retriever, for example, has never seen them before and showed a special interest in the first meeting. In front of him, there was a very tiny, hardly noticeable little frog that was sitting quietly next to the pool. But then it decided to disturb the peace and jumped up, frightening the retriever. Following the frog, the dog jumped up. This made the owner laugh and he took a video. In fact, such a reaction among animals is not considered rare at all. Here, for example, is how a horse behaved when it saw a donkey for the first time in its life. The latter probably thought that was something just like her but different, incomprehensible, and potentially dangerous. The girl next to her immediately tried to calm her friend down, and she succeeded in doing so, except that the horse was still afraid to come closer to the donkey. Isn't it funny how a giant horse is afraid of a tiny donkey? In general, judging by the following clip, horses often give their owners unusual and memorable reactions. In this story, two horsemen were walking along a highway on a street in Wales. In their path, next to the sidewalk, stood a small toy horse. No one could even think that it would become a stumbling block for their horse. When the young horse noticed it, he suddenly stopped and backed up. At first, he stared at the toy warily and was afraid to approach. But then he took guts to come to meet it. I wonder what thoughts the horse had at that moment when he realized that he was afraid of a simple ornament. Now I'm going to show you the memorable reaction of a puppy who saw snow for the first time. A corgi named Potato used to live in California. It hardly ever snows there, so the dog didn't know anything about it. But then the owners moved to a new house in another state. The animal almost immediately had to face this anomaly. The couple was worried that the dog might be afraid of snow, but everything turned out otherwise. The animal fell in love with the snow at first sight and began to wind circles on its new, small but cozy lawn. But this doggy was less quick to make decisions. He didn't immediately realize whether he liked the new change or not. In the video, the girl shows herself with a cosmetic mask on her face and then turns the camera to her best four-legged friend. The dog immediately gets scared and disappears from sight. Then he returns but continues to look at his hostess in surprise. The puppy runs dazedly on the bed, then on the floor, as if asking the unknown girl, "Who are you, and where have you taken my beloved mistress?" The smell tells the dog that his best friend is right in front of him, but his eyes prove otherwise. It's not just dogs that can look so puzzled, but monkeys too. Just to put them in such a state, you'd need to find something to show them. The girl in the following video tried to surprise a primate with her tongue piercing, and it worked. The strange ring interested the monkey so much that she couldn't get away from the glass and kept looking at her tongue from different angles. Cats, in case anyone is wondering, are also quite easy to surprise. All it takes is showing them an electric toothbrush for the first time in their lives. When this furry animal heard the sound of it, his face twisted beyond recognition. I don't think his life will be the same now that he knows his owner is using some scary, noisy thing that he keeps in the house. The teenager in this video was extremely curious about how his favorite pet chicken would react to a lemon. He'd seen many similar clips on the web before, but none of them starring a chicken. There were cats and dogs everywhere. It's the perfect excuse, wouldn't you agree? The guy cut out a few small pieces and offered them to his friend. The chicken took a bite of the lemon, chewed it a bit, and apparently, having tasted it, hovered. When the error in her head was corrected, she leaned toward the man in surprise, as if asking him, "What the hell did you slip me, huh?" It seems to me that when people see themselves on TV for the first time, they react about the same way this dog did. The dog named Bron couldn't contain his emotions when he saw himself on the screen and jumped on the spot as hard as he could, barking. He's got plenty of energy for many more reports. Remember today we already had a dog who looked at himself in the mirror and didn't understand what was going on? So I found another funny video with a mirror. This time it's a horse that plays the role of the main character. The horse, with a small mirror hanging in his stall, behaved as if he had lost contact with the world. He sniffed a stranger in the mirror, repeating his movements, but he did not smell him. Realizing that this would not do, the horse tried to neigh in a friendly manner, but he heard nothing in response. Then he came to the mirror again and began to look closely at his reflection. He leaned his nose against the animal opposite and scanned the fellow. After repeating this several times, the horse finally gave up and left the stall, not appreciating this gift. That's it. Write in the comments what reaction seemed the funniest to you. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel.